It's kind of hard to be the after lunch panel, so we'll hopefully we can keep you entertained as well as informed. I'm Richard Davis. I'm joined by Michael Clay and Shirley Cox, who are on the Civic Engagement Advisory Committee. I'm the director of the new Office of Civic Engagement. What we want to do is tell you about the office, tell you about the program that, in civic engagement that has just been created in the college in the last year, and to talk about how we integrate civic engagement into our courses, and then to open it up to a discussion with you about that same topic. So let me first talk to you about this office. Dean Ogles created this office last year in response to the Futures Committee recommendation of doing more in terms of civic engagement. This was created because of some data that was found by the committee and by the dean about the lack of a concern about civic engagement among our alumni. So the sense was that we need to do something in order to encourage students, while they're students, to become engaged civically so that when they graduate, they can go into their communities and that they can make a difference in their communities. And so we can read this from the Handbook of Instruction. Members should do their civic duty by supporting measures that strengthen society morally, economically, and culturally. Members are urged to be actively engaged in worthy causes to improve their communities and make them wholesome places in which to live and rear families. And then Doctrine and Covenants 58, verily I said men should be anxiously engaged in a good cause and do many things of their own free will and bring to pass much righteousness. So that's what we'd like to do, is to encourage them to do these things. And the purpose of the office is to help them, stimulate them to do so, but also to help them develop skills so they can better accomplish that. So what is civic engagement? Individual and collective actions to address issues of public concern and work to aid in the improvement of a community. So very much in line with what we just read. And some examples here of being civically engaged, and one could come up with many such examples. These are just a few of the kinds of things that we hope that students will be more engaged in because of their exposure to civic engagement through the minor that has been created, but also through the courses that we teach in the college. But what is civic engagement leadership? And that's what we want to focus on, is leadership in civic engagement. So we want them to go to the food bank and volunteer, but we also want them to be able to do this, to motivate and direct others in civic engagement. So they become a change agent by helping others to be involved in civic engagement. The college petition for a new minor in civic engagement leadership, which was approved by the University Curriculum Committee, and it will begin in the fall. This minor in civic engagement leadership is intended to help those who are in the minor know how to make a difference in their community, see models of civic engagement, in other words, people actually engage in civic affairs, have a hands-on experience in civic engagement leadership, and also be able to show prospective employers that they have leadership skills that they might not have otherwise acquired had they not been in this minor. So in this minor, students learned about how to organize other people, work successfully in a nonprofit organization, any range with maybe different causes, communicating with elected officials, helping to shape public policy. It could be at the local level, state level, national, even global, and working effectively in government if that's the form that they want to go. So there are different ways in which one could be civically engaged. The minor has these requirements. One is to complete a one-credit introductory course on civic engagement, and then later in their undergraduate career take a capstone course on civic engagement. And this is the the structure for that hands-on leadership experience that they are expected to have before they get the minor. And then, as a committee, we identified various courses that already have a civic engagement component to them. And we may not be exhaustive in this, and that's kind of why we wanted to have this discussion. But here are ones that we've already identified as having some sort of component of civic engagement that students can take in order to be able to complete the minor. They have to take at least one course outside of their own major, so they have a little more breadth. We've had a couple of recent activities. We've started a civic engagement practitioner lecture series. Our first was Salt Lake County Mayor Ben McAdams, who came in February. We had a workshop on civic engagement, a day-long workshop on April 2nd, and my thanks to those of you who gave extra credit or in some way incentivized students to attend. We had about 350, 400 students at the lecture, the keynote address, and then we had between 75 and 100 at each of our panel sessions throughout the day. So it was great. Thank you very much for what you did to help make that happen. I think students had a positive experience through the workshop. I know those of us who on the faculty were involved had a very positive experience. Pastor France Davis of the Calvary Baptist Church in Salt Lake was a highlight for those who went to that lunch, right, Susie? Just wanted, it made me think having a paid clergy is not such a bad thing.
I agree.
He just spoke so well that you're just mesmerized by his address. Don't take that any further, please.
We'd speak better if we got paid.
And we have we also want to do a scholarly lecture series as well. In fact, we have one set up for the fall. Peter Levine, who is the director of the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning Engagement, which is sort of the premier organization on civic engagement research in the country, will be coming to campus on September 24th, a lecture. So this is where we are. We see ourselves as a resource for you in thinking about how to take your curriculum and perhaps adding some kind of civic engagement components to it, getting students more engaged in the larger community. So Alan Hawkins has just joined us from Family Life, is going to first talk about how he uses civic engagement in his curriculum, and then Michael Clay in geography and Shirley Cox in social work, and then we'll go to that point.
Okay. I teach a class in the School of Family Life, Family Public Policy, and have tried to integrate this idea of promoting civic engagement with the students that take that class. The first thing I do is I try to orient the class in that way. And so I let them know at day one that the class is more oriented towards, if you will, kind of responsible citizenship than it is towards a professional career. Those aren't mutually exclusive by any means, but I give a stronger emphasis to that. And then I have a number of assignments that and activities that we do within the course that I hope will reinforce and open up to them the possibilities that they could have as responsible citizens engaged in civic life. One thing that I do is I have the students either on their own or working with me do family impact statement, brief family impact statements that analyze from a kind of family theory and family research perspective the impact that particular proposed legislation will have on family issues and on children. I've done this here in the state of Utah, with the legislative session going during winter term, so I scheduled the class to be during winter term. And a member of the state legislature has over the years asked me to do these kinds of things. What I've done is told him that I'm going to invite my students to help me out with these. And so these are very brief statements, but we try and analyze that, and we send it on to him, and he distributes it to colleagues that he feels would benefit from an analysis that way. Students sometimes will identify legislation on their own that they want to do, and that's been fine too. But I try to show them that legislators are open to that kind of involvement and can appreciate it. We also take some field trips during the semester to legislative hearings, usually ones that I've been involved with, but not all the time. So that they can see what that's like, and they can see that those hearings are open to everyone to come and express their views and to listen in. And they enjoy those. Finally, I make one of the assignments is civic engagement, making a difference plan for their life. And I asked them to think about what contributions they would like to make, how they're going to do it, how they can stay up to date on things. I asked them a number of things that way, and that becomes one of the significant assignments at the end of the semester for them. For a few, I think it really has helped to launch some real significant involvement post-graduation. As a responsible citizen engaged in the community. For most, I think it's an exercise, though I think it may be a long-term thing. Maybe some of them will come back to that later in life. But those are some of the kinds of things that I try to do in my family public policy class to encourage greater civic engagement.
All right, my name is Michael Clay from the Geography Department. I head the Urban and Regional Planning program here on campus. So we do a lot. So urban and regional planning is a very hard thing to teach just in the classroom. So we do a lot with civic engagement, especially where there's only one faculty member on campus. A lot of our adjunct faculty who teach for us are actual practitioners from the community. Most of the class projects are real-world practical projects that the kids do, that the students do. I was calling kids, shouldn't. The students do with communities. Well, when I got here on campus, the curriculum hadn't been updated in quite a while, and so we formed a steering committee made up of a lot of local practitioners to help us reformulate the curriculum here for the urban planning program. From that, we were able to harvest a bunch of potential guest lecturers, a bunch of project sponsors, that we've been using throughout the last almost 4 years now to create projects and guest lectures for our classes. So, well, the list, it would be different by discipline, and how you would implement this would differ by discipline. I'll just read off some of the people that we bring in and the kind of projects that they allow us to do. So we bring in Shane Marshall, he's the Deputy Director for the Utah Department of Transportation. Matt Sybil is the Director of Planning for UTA. Ted Knowlton is the Associate Director of the Wasatch Front Regional Council. They do all the transportation planning up and down the 5 counties of the Wasatch Front. Shane Seeger is the Director of Planning for Mountainlands Association of Governments. They do all the transportation planning for Utah County, Wasatch County, and those surrounding areas. Directors of Planning of Local Governments, we bring in Fred Agater, the Director of Planning for the City of Springville. Dave Anderson, the Director of Planning for the City of Spanish Fork. Gary McGinn, the Director of Planning for the City of Provo, and as well as Directors of Planning from Eagle Mountain, Linden, American Fork, and many other places. So what's that turned into? In our planning methods class, the students for their major project do some kind of an actual community plan or a community study that leads to a plan. These are things that get voted on and adopted by local planning commissions, things that get voted on and adopted by city councils. So I'll just read through just a few of them. The first two were sponsored by the Utah chapter of the American Planning Association. That was a Wasatch Front parking regulation study. When a Walmart or something comes in, every city has different requirements for how much parking that kind of development needs. The APA wanted to know, how standardized are those across the Wasatch Front. We did that. Sign regulation study, also sponsored by the Utah APA. We did a downtown revitalization plan for the city of Spanish Fork. We did a Main Street visioning project for the city of Salem, and a Springville City commercial design standards. All of those were adopted by the city councils of those various cities. So these things then typically for the students lead to internships. So in order to graduate from the urban planning program, the students have to have either an internship or a mentored research project. Most of those class projects lead to the students getting internships around this state. We've had students get internships as far away as South Africa in urban planning. There's a tremendous need for urban planning all across the world, really, but especially in many developing areas. So we've had a lot of international stuff. So internships and/or then mentored research. So this is how I get to use them to further my research, is they've got to do some kind of mentored research project. That's anywhere from 4 to 15 students that I get to work with. Freudian slip of the tongue there. Get to work with, not have to work with, though it can be an administrative burden. But working on projects that are real world planning projects that we're doing and seeking publication in. I've had students travel with me to Guam, to Peru, to lots of different places on real planning projects. There's kind of a little bit of a blurred line sometimes between consulting and research. I'm an academic, so I do most of it as research funded through research types of venues. But we do, so this year we have quite a bit of stuff that's funded through consulting stuff. And I have a private consulting firm that does some stuff on the side with the students, and they do internships through that as a way of gaining additional practical experience. And what does that turn into for the students? That their resumes are strong. We place about 80% of our graduates in positions, in planning positions, which is very hard for just having the bachelor's degree. Most of them need to have a master's degree in urban planning to do that. We've placed 100% of our students that want to go to graduate school into the graduate school of their choice. We've sent people to Rutgers, we've sent people to Cornell, we've sent people to the University of Illinois Chicago, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Arizona State, USC, and all of those kids, Georgia Tech, all of those kids have gone on full funded fellowships, largely because of the civic engagement work that they've done here at BYU in the undergraduate urban planning program. So that's some of what I've done. Obviously that would differ by discipline, but because of the way my discipline is formulated, there's a lot of sort of civic engagement type of work that we do, working with elected officials. We've had meetings with citizens on various issues, and the students are heavily engaged in every part of that.
Yes. I was in Michaela's session earlier, and we were talking about the transfer of knowledge from class to class through a sequence. And as I was sitting there, I thought about the civic engagement piece, which is, to me, sort of a transfer of learning from class to class out to the community, and to sort of finding who you are and how you want to serve within the greater environment. Social workers are kind of involved in this anyway. We serve individuals, families, groups, and communities, and so we do a lot of consulting and research with communities on national health issues, national social issues, all over the world. And so we're sort of out there doing that, and students are already having to do the internship hours and having to come up with projects and having to come up with special research projects that they can use to sort of make an impact in the world. I think this empowering the students is tremendously important for whatever area you're teaching. Students now simply have to see the bigger picture. So what does this mean? So I'm studying history, I'm studying whatever. What am I going to do with this? What do I need to know? How is this going to apply? How is this going to be useful? And I think it's so important that we help them do this almost from the very beginning. So as I teach the Foundation Social Work class 200, it's really important to me that they do an internship during that course. And it's just a beginning of how do I find an agency who has a need for what it is I think I can do, and what is it they think that they need that I can meet. So it's kind of a meeting or a pairing of what is it the community wants or expects or hopes for, and what do students see that they have the skills and abilities to do, and how can they develop those. And I think it's just imperative to us that we place that really at a high level, that we prepare our students to go forth and serve. So many students come to BYU for that reason. And if we don't help them make these connections as to how do we do that, I think we fail in our job. And I think we can do a better job of that, and I think we can help each other more. It's been a joy to work with Michael and Ellen and Richard on this committee, because I'm seeing so many similarities between what we're doing and what we're trying to help accomplish with the students.
Okay, thank you. Let me just add some of the things that I do. I teach an Intro to American Politics course, and if I'm teaching that course in a fall of an election year, I will give extra credit for students who go out and get involved in a campaign that's going on. They have to write a report about it. They have to give me a contact person for the campaign they worked for, so I can kind of check if indeed they've done this. But I do this because I want them to actually have some experience. They tend not to, I'm not talking about semester-long involvement, I'm talking about maybe 10 hours of involvement in the campaign. So they're passing out literature, they're helping at events, they're seeing a real-world application to what I'm talking about when I talk about campaigns and elections. If the course is in the spring of an election year, then I will give them extra credit for going to a political caucus, a party caucus. Since they're held in March, that works well. They are supposed to go there and then again write a report afterwards about which one they went to, where it was, and what happened, and basically what they learned from the experience. They don't have to be elected a delegate to anything. They don't have to register with the party. They're just observing. They don't have to vote. But they can just see what's going on. Now, some of them actually do. I mean, they'll actually become a delegate. And there are times also that when it's not an election year, that I'll have a mock caucus in class, or actually an extra time, typically in the evening, where they'll come and we'll pretend that we're in a party caucus, and they will deal with the sort of things that happen in a party caucus. In my campaigns and elections course, students are required to get involved in a campaign or a political party organization, and again, to spend more hours than the intro level students, the freshmen, and to do more, to play a more active role in the campaign than those students do. I also will have during that class a candidate plan assignment where a group of students comes together and they actually develop a plan for a candidate. And the reason I do that is so that, and this typically is later in the semester, so that they can actually make application to the concepts that we've been talking about through this semester about voting behavior, about the role of the media, about campaign finance. They can actually apply it to a particular race that will happen sometime in the future. So those are things I do. We wanted to open it up to you to tell us things that you do, if you'd be interested in sharing. Also, are there courses that you teach that we have not listed here that we ought to know about and can include it for students who want to minor in civic engagement leadership? So let me open it up to you, either of those.
So a couple of anthropology, we teach an applied anthropology course, we have an anthropology of development course, and then all of our cultural anthropology majors have to do a senior thesis project, some of them do community-driven project, like more applied projects that I think would fit well with what you're trying to do. Not all, some of them do end up doing more, I suppose, theoretically driven projects, but some of them are, particularly those that have like an international development minor, for example, do specifically sort of civic engagement oriented projects. But I would personally like to see that those courses listed under this minor. And also, I think, it strikes me that this would be something we ought to list on our department website as not a minor that we offer, but minors that anthropology students tend to be interested in.
Good idea. Thank you.
I'm from the history department, and I teach a course on South African liberation movements, which I see as being sort of the historical perspective on a lot of this. So that's something, and I can't speak for my entire department, but I'm sure there are other courses and professors who would be interested in incorporating some of these assignments into some of these practical assignments, maybe the history of certain policies or the history of certain organizations that students might be interested in doing. So I also wondered if you're thought of doing, sort of getting at students when they first come to BYU and letting them know about this minor in some way, being a part of the orientation, freshman orientation. I think that would be great to let the students know about this and how it can be a great minor for a lot of different majors. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Maybe to discuss some of the benchmarks that you're looking for classes in terms of hours and other kinds of things. Because many of us may have components of them, but whether or not they would fit in as one of the electives. Can you give us some guidelines or parameters?
Yeah, we define this fairly broadly. So it was some sort of component, and you can see there are different ways in which you do this, that gets students involved in the community or somehow connected to the community. But I think we're pretty broad about what that might be. It would be best to kind of come to us and say, we've got these courses that fit, we think, this requirement, these are the components of the courses. We took a look at syllabi, we talked to department chairs to try to identify, and that's how we came up with this list, but we know that it's not exhaustive. So the best thing to do, I think, is to communicate with me, say these are the kinds of courses and this is what we have in those courses, would that fit? Rebecca?
Yeah, so I looked before at the website and read a little bit about the minor, and I was struck in the way it's presented and some of the coursework that's required as representing a kind of particular model of civic engagement that is actually fairly narrow. And you talk about kind of the focus on leadership development. It's not just on leadership development, but it also seems a particular kind of leadership that's kind of top-down, more hierarchical and institutionally based. And so I wonder if that's what you're really hoping to do, and if there might be more play kind of across the college for this minor, if it were to be opened up. And I think that will also have different implications for the students and the types of students that you'll get interested in this minor. If you kind of open it up away from this kind of more narrow focus on a particular type of leadership and a particular model of civic engagement, if that makes sense.
So what would you suggest?
So I do research in the civil rights movement, so I can imagine a course like Leslie's suggesting her African liberation course that we might look at the history of the American civil rights movement, and it would look at kind of different times and places and different organizations and individuals and approaches they've taken to civil rights and why that's worked or not worked. That would be kind of another way of expanding how students think about civic engagement and the type of issues that they think about when they think about civic engagement. I don't know, I saw the list of classes, I don't know if one of those is an urban sociology class, but if we're trying to create students who really understand deeply important issues, that would be a really key class. And even if the focus is on creating leaders, that particular classes that will help students understand issues deeply will be very important. Not just, how do you connect with political leaders and processes, but how you actually engage in important political issues and social issues and think about those. So I guess I just have a kind of more participatory approach, kind of bottom-up grassroots approach to civic engagement. And I want to encourage, for instance, female students who might not see themselves as, becoming a political leader or heading an NGO, to think of themselves as able to get involved civically in significant ways in their communities as they move forward and maybe aren't so focused on that, but can still ways to develop that. So.
We did already, and probably we didn't reflect that very well on the website, but we were very interested in women, particularly doing some leadership and organizing neighborhoods or school groups, or women interested in a local cause, even something in their neighborhood that they want to really. Go ahead.
So I'll just say that is not communicated at all. The picture that you have is a picture of a group of male and female students, which is great, sitting around the boardroom table dressed in white shirts, looking at computers, right? This is not what my image of civic engagement looks like.
Yeah.
And it's not going to encourage students to think about it in this more expansive way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Dave?
The college and university has a major investment in civic engagement in Washington, D.C., as well as here in the state in internship programs. We place roughly 40 to 50 students a semester in Washington, D.C., full-time internships that are extraordinary opportunities. These are not limited to political science, economics, and international relations. For example, public health has become a much more important provider of our interns. They're working in important public health agencies around Washington, D.C. We have a facility, the Milton Barlow Center, that houses most of the interns, including some married couples. And I think it's important, given the investment that we've made, that we encourage students in all disciplines to consider preparing for and doing a full-time internship in Washington, D.C., which seems to me like the epitome of the capstone you spoke of earlier.
And Scott Dunaway is on our advisory committee, and he is there for this very purpose, so that we can integrate what we're doing into the internship program more effectively. But that's something that we're wrestling with, is how can we take this leadership project and somehow integrate it into the internship experience that students are already going to have, and perhaps encourage them, those who may not have thought about the internship but want to do this experience, to perhaps do it within the structure.
Well, the current curriculum has them doing a paper on addressing a political problem or a civic problem.
Right.
And I think it comes pretty close to what I heard you describing. And I think, given the amount of hands-on time experience with briefings, seeing how civic engagement works in a wide range of applications, nonprofits, etc. It ought to be considered to be almost a key element of what we're trying to promote.
No, I agree, and Scott has been a very vocal advocate within our committee of that very thing.
One other point to make is, unlike many universities that just send interns to Washington for 3 credit hours in the summer, our university, and especially political science, has dedicated FTE to this program, so that there are full-time faculty in Washington with the students. So in the future, there could be some conversation between the faculty and this minor to tweak it in whatever ways need to be done to make it qualified. So I don't think there would be opposition to that from the faculty. I think it's actually very close already.
Yeah.
The key issue here is we're year-round, not just summer. Some of the best internship opportunities are during the winter semester when Washington is cold and snowy. But relatively few other interns are there. Only the year-round programs are competing with us. And we have choice assignments for students in all majors.
And the other program is the legislative internship program in the Utah legislature.
And one of the things we might want to think about, Richard, is for those students who are doing Washington Seminar and the state legislative programs, they should be strongly encouraged to be thinking about this civic engagement minor. I don't think we require it, but that it just seems a natural fit. And so what it means for them is, gee, I need to take maybe 1 or 2 other classes to be able to round it out.
Because and Dave, the courses count. The courses for the internship count for the minor in order to encourage that kind of cross-pollinization. Rebecca?
I guess I'll just go back to, I'm all for encouraging these great internship opportunities, but again, that reinforces this particular kind of traditional way of thinking about civic engagement that I would hope that the college would be able to kind of expand.
Well, I think our intent was never to make this minor solely for those who intend to make a career out of government or public service or nonprofit management. In fact, I would guess most of the students are not going to go in that direction. We hope that we get 2 constituencies. One will be those people, but the other will be just those who want to know how to work more effectively in their communities as volunteers. I don't know if that addresses more of what you're talking about. I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if that's the hope, that we might need to do some work in presenting it that way, as well as incorporating curriculum that will actually achieve those ends.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's one of the problems we've had, I think, with, frankly, involving history, because we haven't thought of a way to use those historical events like the Civil Rights Movement or South Africa apartheid into the civic engagement program, because students do need to understand that history of civil action. But we need to talk more with the history department about how we can use those courses, your courses, in this minor. Yes.
Yeah, my question is kind of help bridge this discussion. I'm a sociologist who has a degree in urban regional planning, and the students that I had urban sociology and planning students that have some of the best, they're not just listening to lectures from directors of planning, they go to the meetings and they help shape the policy, not just in the classroom too. And so I think thinking more broadly about the bottom-up approach would involve collecting data from the students, both intake and outtake when they leave the minor. I mean, what do they think civic engagement is? What do they want to do? How do they see the bottom up versus the top down? And so forth, I mean, we don't have to just guess about what the students want. I think we could try to collect data on that. And I think that's really important because a lot of the students feel a lot of pressure from their parents to have a vocational approach where, everything you're doing should be something that is remunerated with, a higher salary or wage. But if they think more holistically about it, let's collect data on that and find that out, right? And I think bringing in that holistic picture of, like, for example, in planning both bottom up and top down into that introduction seminar, your first class that you have, whatever discipline it is, I think is really critical to speak to some of the concerns that Rebecca has brought up.
And the structure that we've set up here allows us to do that, because we can survey students when they enter in the first course, and we can survey again when they leave in the capstone course.
Continually learn from that. I think that's really important. I knew you had something in place, and I'm just bringing that up as a way to kind of bridge, what we're talking about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I thought just the seminar that you had with Elizabeth Smart, I teach psychology, so I encouraged all my students to go, and I went myself, and none of them probably really bought into the civic engagement portion of it, but I think it was so helpful for them to see from a kind of a real up-close and personal view someone deal with an incredibly traumatic event in a very novel way. I mean, she is not someone who is your typical survivor of that sort of thing. So when they came back to class, they really were energized about looking at alternative ways to kind of treat post-traumatic stress disorder, trauma, disability, psychiatric survivorship, all of those issues in psychology. She provided a really real-life example of how to do it. And so just with that, I mean, that was very grassroots for me, because I thought, wow, this is so unusual that they would buy into somebody's story so powerfully that it helped them academically and possibly from a career viewpoint. So that part,
Good.
I really buy into.
Good, good, yeah, yeah.
I think, I didn't see psychology up there at all, but I think psychology interfaces with what you're describing in a few ways. One is we have a graduate and undergraduate level course in applied social psychology, and the professor, Dr. Ridge, they always do a project where they will either implement a program or do a study on either a community organization and some issue they're facing, or they also work with the faculty center sometimes on issues we face that are teaching. But that class requires a project that I think would overlap nicely. We also have a significant internship program where students are placed locally in a number of environments where they're involved with families, social systems, not political organizations, sometimes government. So I think the internship program would be a nice connection. Then we have several courses that I think actually topic-wise are kind of similar to the ones mentioned, like civil rights. I teach a course on Psych and the Holocaust, for example, trying to help students understand the importance of civic engagement as a way to defend against oppression and other things. And then we have a gender roles and issues course as well that I think is very relevant. So I think
Okay.
psychology has some interface
Good,
there.
good, that's great. Paul?
Just two quick questions. One, did you mention that you have a survey and an advanced course that you teach? In the survey course, the students receive extra credit. They get involved in the electioneering aspects. But then in the advanced course, that's built in as part of.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
It's required, right.
I'm sure I heard that.
Yes.
My other thought was, especially in that introductory course, and you'll have this covered, of course, as a political scientist, but it might be good to bring out to the group. It's a time also, the depth that we've heard reflected on historically, philosophically, to reflect on what does it mean to be civic, its original Latin root, citizen, the city. What does it mean to be a member of a society, a community, a citizen? That there's some philosophical vector so that students, as they plunge into the engagement side, understand it from reflection and political philosophical thought. What does this mean? What does it mean to be a good citizen, for example? So somewhere along the line, but probably early on, might be helpful.
Well, I think we're going to hear that from Peter Levine.
Oh, right.
Because he's a philosopher. But I think you're absolutely right. What we're hoping to do is to be able to expand to other colleges. I mean, humanities would be quite likely, and bring in other courses from other colleges to be electives, and I think that will then draw in students as well, and I think philosophy would be a place we start, in humanities particularly.
And I was just thinking as a foundation, within that, was it 100?
Yes.
The very first course?
Or 200.
Or 200. That might be an aspect for every student to think about. What does it mean to be a citizen, to live in a community?
Yes,
Why be
I agree.
civically engaged?
I agree, yeah, yeah.
Just along the lines of other sort of colleges and things to connect here, one gap that I noticed is that there aren't any courses on sort of environmental issues, environmental civic organizations, and that sort of thing. So talking to someone like George Hanley and other folks in the biology department would also be another.
Yeah, we actually have looked at the environmental science, because they do have an environmental policy course that probably fits in here. And I think our next go-around to the University Curriculum Committee is going to be including these courses that we think are really pretty natural fit. And they may attract students as well to the minor.
And one other group to maybe think about are the prospective teachers in our college, because they're going to go into classrooms, and I think it's really vital that they help their students prepare for civic engagement. And so if they can that background as a minor, I think they're a step ahead in achieving that goal.
So the education majors,
Yeah, so our social science composite teaching majors in particular, they're serviced through the history department, but they take courses in political science and geography and the other social sciences.
okay, thank you.
Another avenue might be looking at the Ballard Center in Marriott School and their focus. They've got courses on social innovation, things like that. Courses. All I know about it is what my wife has told me she's taken the Do Good Better class. You know my wife, Richard.
Yes, Maren.
And yeah, she's very interested in social innovation. And they've got the Ballard Center is particularly well suited to this. They've also got some internships.
We had, I had a good conversation with Todd Manwaring, who's the director of the Ballard Center, about sort of beginning the relationship between the two. And he actually attended our workshop.
Okay.
And was moderated a panel for us.
Yeah.
So we want to make that connection also with the nonprofit management minor, or is it major, at the Marriott School as well.
Yeah,
So
that
we
would
can
seem-
find
that
some common
Seems to
ground.
me like that would get us some concerns like that Rebecca raised.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Other questions you might have? Thank you for your attention, and we expect to interact with you a lot more. Yes.